Hello, Concealed Coalition. Austin Davis, your National Director of Training. And I am so glad you showed up for this webinar. When we first got this topic, I got to be honest with you, I wasn't really into it. I'm like going, how to pick a new home and crime prevention. But then all of a sudden I started thinking, going, oh my gosh, of all the crime prevention discrete skill sets we should have, this should be at the top of it, and no one ever thought of it. Another of many reasons why Kaci's a genius. So I came to it with a great deal of enthusiasm, and whether you rent, own, or want to build, I think this topic will be very helpful to you. Even if you are, glued to the foundation of your home going, I'm never leaving. They're bringing me out of here feet first. All of our friends and families who want to move and either buy, build, or rent another home, these same tips apply to them. So whether you're moving or you have a son, daughter, friend, brother, sister, cousin, aunt, uncle who's moving, I really think these topics we're talking about in this webinar is going to really hit home and give you a whole nother level of discrete skill set to protect what matters most. Now, to start this off, we have to introduce our co-host for this month's webinar, and I'm going to allow you to meet Kaci. Kaci, take it away. Please tell them who you are, what you do, and what you're trying to protect.
Awesome. Hi, Austin. Thank you so much for meeting with me and advising me on this big change in my family's life. I'm a director of marketing here at Concealed Coalition, actually. I'm also a mother of 3 boys. And so I have a 9-year-old, 5-year-old, and 1-year-old. So spaced every 4 years apart. I don't know how that happened, but it works for our family. And so my husband and I are just really invested in moving to a school district that we want to, have them kind of be at for, in perpetuity, really. We are currently renting. We're in the city. We want to get some land. We want to move into more of kind of a rural area of the Dallas-Fort Worth area. But I've only ever lived in Dallas on the Dallas side. And so I've never lived on like the Fort Worth side. And so as we go over there, obviously we're doing, moving from one side to the other, we're trying to do our due diligence and look into all the safety. And there's a reason why we chose the particular city that we're looking at, for building or for buying. But I wanted to come to you because I know that you're the expert in all things safety and defensive living, and protecting my family, especially in 2024, is top of mind for me. So that's why I'm here, and a little bit about me.
Well, fantastic. First off, this whole topic was your suggestion, and kudos to you, 2 thumbs up. The thing that we need to think about when we talk about this before we get into kind of the weeds and the details is, to me, when we talk about moving your home, home is the one place you should not only be safe, you should also feel safe. So before we talk about where you might be moving, can we dig a little deeper in where you are now? What do you like about where you are now and the neighborhood and the sort of big picture thing? And what do you like about the structure you're at now that you want to take with you? Is there anything that you're not really quite comfortable with that you want to fix in the next place?
Yeah, there are a few things. So we live in a pretty safe area of Dallas, in the suburbs, north of Dallas, actually, currently. We do live off a very, I know, safe. It's all relative, right? So we do live off.
I'm sorry, but you know my line. Safe neighborhood. We live in a safe neighborhood. Like the criminals have some big Google map they're working off of. Oh, can't go there. That's that safe neighborhood. Sorry. Keep going. So you live in a
very true. There's the occasional, petty crime theft that happens, someone going into the back alley of our neighborhood and, opening a truck door if it's unlocked and things like that. So we do, we are mindful of things like that. But one thing about our current place of residence, like I said, we're renting, is that it's right up against a major street. And so we're looking to, get our kids back off the street a little bit. Anything could happen. I'm not only, easier access for people to come off of the street, but also accidents could happen with vehicles off of that street. So that's just one aspect of why we're looking to move. All the houses are very much right on top of each other, and we'd love a little bit more space. We want our boys to be able to go out and run and play. But again, in the back of my mind, if we move into more of a rural area, how much do I let them run and play? So there's just kind of pros and cons to moving out of the city and into the country, or vice versa.
Well, when you think about three young boys growing up in a big chunk of land, it makes my heart happy because we had a big chunk of land we could play with as kids, and it was the ultimate playground. The only thing is you're going to need some sort of, when you start thinking, we get to the part about the design of the house, is some sort of outside hosing the boys off thing before they come in. So,
That's a very good point.
little special area, this little sign above it, hose off boys.
That's
Turn
true.
around. Like a scene out of Pulp Fiction.
An outside shower system or something for sure.
I'm seeing this. So one of the things I want to talk about is I would like to break this conversation down into the moving into sort of three big topics to kind of help you and everyone else who's making this decision. And that is public, private, and intimate. When I think of public, I think of sort of the big issues that you really can't change. When I think about private spaces, that is whether you're going to be in a gated community or an open community, or where your sidewalk ends and your home begins, or in your case, you want to do a little more rural, where the fence line ends and where it is. And, suddenly you have to think, well, if I'm in a more rural area and I need some sort of 911 call, I'm probably a little more on my own. If I'm in an urban area and I need a 911 call, it's probably because I'm in an urban area and I'm more likely to need to call 911. And people always tell me, I don't worry about crime because I live out in the country. And I always go, oh, there's crime in the country. There's just no witnesses. So
Yeah, that's a good point.
it is a balancing act. The first thing I want to address, though, is before we move anywhere, is it comes to another line you may have heard me talk about a lot in Concealed Coalition University, and that is there's safe places and dangerous places and dangerous places and safe places. And when we're protecting the thing that matters most, it's our job to know which one's which. Now, one of the big things, and I'm going to use my own life for an example, we went through this whole process 4 years ago. And because I've been doing this for 32 years, I didn't really think of it that I went through a process, but actually I did. We were living in a place in inner Houston, and I mean inner Houston. And I'm traveling a lot with the Virtual Tactical Academy. So I'm on the road with my virtual simulator all over the country and leaving my wife behind. I did not feel comfortable leaving her there. So we started looking around. Now, we still wanted to stay in the Houston area, but what we found out was if we moved outside of the Houston area, which is in something called Harris County, if I moved to the next county over, which in my case is Brazoria County, my world's a very different place. But really and truly, if you came to visit me, you would go, oh, you live in Houston. No, I don't. I live in another community that's right up to the edge of the county that Houston's in. And I'm literally 400 yards from the city line, but I have a completely different crime profile. My police department that protects my family is a completely different situation. So one thing is when you start looking for your rural area, you might want to start thinking, where's that property line? Because when I talk about the property line, it's not so much the physical changes that are 400 yards away. It is a different sheriff and it's a different district attorney. Now, sheriff is an interesting relationship because it's really the only public law enforcement officer, that and constables, that we get to vote on. Everyone else kind of gets assigned to us. But the thing about the district attorney and where you're looking for your new home does two things. One, in that other county, they let people go. In my county, they lock them up. It's a completely different thing. And your district attorney does two things. It keeps the bad guys in jail and off the streets and off your front porch. But it also helps if you have to defend your family. If I had to defend my family, it will be judged by the same state laws, but very differently, 400 yards off to 400 yards here. So before you start moving, I want to go ahead and look and think about what's my district attorney like. And you never need to know who your district attorney is and what their attitude is until you need them. And then it's like, holy cow, they will not put this person who just came in and attacked me and my family in jail. They released him on bond. To give you a classic example, in Harris County, where Houston is, we a few months ago had a police officer who was shot coming home in his own vehicle in uniform and killed. The two people who killed him were both in jail, let out for manslaughter, and they both had ankle monitors on them, and they were separate charges for murder. They both had tried to kill or did kill somebody else. They let out on signature bonds. They both had ankle monitors when they shot the other officer. That stuff just doesn't really fly in this county. So not to put a bummer on this new move, but that's the first thing. Next thing is when you find out where you want to move, I'd like you to figure out what police department that is. I'd like you to walk on down to the local police department and say, hi, I'm moving here. Do you have somebody I can talk to? And the officer's going to look at you like you have a third eye.
I was going to say, that sounds like an awkward kind of question.
And then all of a sudden, you're going to see the light bulb come over and go, oh, yeah. Because they're going to tell you, look, this is a great community or it's a crappy community, but the version of that police heart brain is going to say there's safe places and dangerous places and dangerous places and safe places. And they're going to tell you, hey, this town is great if you live in this community, or this community. Now, you may want to help them and kind of go, we're looking to buy here. How's that sound? Or we have 2 or 3 options picked out. But you're a local police officer. We become cops because we want to catch bad guys and make citizens safer. But almost everything we get to do is reactive, not proactive. So when someone comes to you and goes, hey, I'd like to solve my problem, usually you're going to find that's pretty helpful. The next thing is we have to decide if somebody is going to rent, buy, or build. Now, right now you're renting. And what I like about renting is if your neighbors turn out to be cartel members or just drunken idiots or people who really love the bass in their stereo, it's very easy to move. The bad part about renting when we make these decisions, though, is it's very hard for you to make leasehold improvements to doors, windows, things to make you safer. If you buy, you walk into this with one fixed thing and you can look and say, okay, the back door needs to be changed and the windows, and you kind of know. If you build, you get to start from a blank slate and go, hey guys, when you put the frame in, I want 6-inch screws around everything to secure it in. You go there. Have you all made the decision on whether you want to buy or build in this process yet?
We have. So we originally, just to give you some history, a few weeks ago, we put an offer on a house. So we were fully set on buying a house. So it was kind of the dream home scenario with a pool and a shed and the home and the 2-acre plus property. And so we put an offer on a house, and unfortunately we didn't win the bid on that. There were a couple of other offers that had also come in. So we actually are talking with the homeowner right now who happens to be a builder. And so obviously we're vetting some other builders as well, but we're like, we really liked your house. How can you make this happen on a couple of the lots that we have in mind? So we actually are going up there tomorrow to talk with the builder, talk with another builder too, and vet the land. But we've identified 2 or 3 properties that we really just like. One is in a gated, they're all in, even though I say rural, they're all in communities. So they're all in one's in a gated kind of subdivision and the other one is not gated. And so there are kind of some things that we're thinking about back and forth on that. But to answer your question, we're 90% certain at this point that we are going to be building.
Okay, great. When we get down to the intimate part, we'll discuss about what we're going to look for in windows, window direction, construction of the doors. And because when it comes time for those upgrades, they can be kind of expensive, and we're going to kind of run through that. Let's talk about the gated and not gated community thing. The full disclosure, I live in a gated community. Even more full disclosure, I live in an over 55 community. So basically the reason I picked a gated over 55 community is anyone in my neighborhood under 55 walking down the street, not pushing a lawnmower, is going to get jacked up by our security people.
Makes sense.
And even better, all my neighbors are not very mobile. So if some bad guys chase us, all I got to do is outrun my neighbor. I don't have to worry about outrunning the bad guy. So there's some real upsides to that. The problem with the gated community, though, is it can be kind of intimidating sometimes for some of our guests. If we throw a party, a rave, whatever, coming through the guard gate, sometimes they don't feel real comfortable. And I've had some people kind of have issues about that. But what I really like, though, is I think the bad guys coming through have a real problem with it as well, because they have to stop at a gate. Someone says hi. There's camera readers that read their license plate, takes a picture of everything in there, automatically sends them on through. This community is gone since the 80s. We have only had one death, and that was in like 93, and that was a murder-suicide with an elderly couple who was in hospice, and it was kind of an unusual situation, but we don't have car break-ins here. We don't have catalytic converter theft. The problem with the gated community, though, is before you make that commitment, a couple things. Number one, check, see what their fees are. I'm kind of shocked when I pay every month just to have that guy do this, have the security team protect us. But second off, the homeowners association can be a good thing or a bad thing for you. I'm a big fan of a strong homeowners association because I'm a big fan of the broken window theory, that the minute you start letting somebody let their lawn go, put a crappy beat up car down there, I think it sends a message to everybody that all things are there. The problem is you have a really strong homeowner association, you paint your door purple and they come down on you. You and your husband will be looking at each other evil over dinner going, I hate these people. I wanted that purple door so bad.
Yeah.
Before you move in, though, one thing you might want to do, though, is go talk to somebody in the homeowners association to ask them what the situation is and look for the trends on what's going on. What I'm finding right now is some of the people I'm talking to in different parts of the country, their neighborhoods are going through real transitions. So you may have a neighborhood that's going in ascension where things are getting better, and the gated community you're in might be okay, but around it, might be a transitional space where this is all kind of going down. The home values are going down. We also have to be very careful because a lot of the place I patrol, the city I patrol, had some real problems because they had a huge flood after Hurricane Harvey, and it changed the whole dynamics of the city. Some of the properties got wiped out. Some of them got sort of marginally rebuilt, and our tax base is down still from that. And the city is in kind of one of these declines. The city that we moved into, though, is without a doubt on one of these inclines. So kind of take a big look there. Next thing is when we're looking at the sort of the big public area is start to kind of think, okay, when I live in my home, I have to go out to grocery store, I have to go to parks, I have to go to these other places. I'd like you to kind of do a tour of those. But, if you go to the grocery store, you may go in the daytime and go, well, this is great. The parking lot's not too sketchy. Cruise by that bad boy at about 9:30, 10 o'clock at night and see what you got. Also,
Yeah, that's a really good point.
don't be afraid of things like dry cleaners, banks, all those other things. Also, when you check out that in the daytime and nighttime, don't just check out the front. Drive around the back of the building. Do you have graffiti? Do you have tagging all over the place? That tells me an awful, awful lot about what's going on in the community that may or may not be as obvious from the front. So it kind of goes back to my broken theories. If I owned a bank or a shopping center or whatever, if they're tagging the back, I'm spray painting over that every day and letting them know you don't own this back property and on there. And of course, finally, get online and do your due diligence on, what the crime trends are there and what's not going on. Once you figure that out and you decide we're going to go to the gated community, not gated community, and you pick your property, now the big question is neighbors. Now, I don't know if you ever saw the family safety episode we did on Concealed Coalition University, but I did a whole section on neighbors. So I think neighbors are either the greatest asset you can possibly have to improving the quality of your life, or they will make you nuts. I know it's a police officer because I get these calls all the time, and these are normal, rational, loving people who, when I get there, are literally insane because that neighbor, the crazy neighbor, has pushed their buttons so hard. And I know that they're at their limits because the minute I get out of the patrol car, they're rushing up, trying to explain to me the last 2 years in under 2 minutes. And then,
Oh gosh.
go kill him. Go kill him. You got a gun. Go do it. If you won't give me your gun, I'll go kill him. It's just,
no.
it's nuts. We had somebody the other day, they were throwing chicken at each other. I don't mean live. Leftover. It was just, when you get there, it's just like, and what happens is, you need to break your neighbors down to 3 things: good neighbors, bad neighbors, unknown. Now, here's the problem. You move in, you meet your neighbor. One neighbor's Mrs. Johnson, single, widowed woman, just charming, loves your kids, loves you, looking on the other side. And it's like the perfect nuclear family. And you go, oh, these are great people. I love them. They love me. And it's great. Next thing you know, Mrs. Johnson moves into a home, new family shows up, you now have another set of neighbors. So you just might want to think when you're looking at your neighbor situation, whether you have existing problems with neighbors, but also, is there some way to separate them out from you so that you could say, you know what, we have a good fence here. So even if things go sour, we have a nice privacy fence between me and them. But sometimes you have to share a driveway or share a common area or some sort of property boundary line that could cause a problem. So something to kind of think about. If you're having a 2-acre place on this, you can probably put some sort of fence. But then this goes back to, before you get there, make sure you do your due diligence with your homeowner association of what kind of fence you can put, what kind of fence you can't put, and what you have to do to maintain that fence line and where the public property is.
Yep, makes sense. Understood.
Yeah. Let me see anything else here. Graffiti hunt. I think I got pretty much that. Now let's talk about the good stuff. The intimate areas, the house, the part we all want to talk about. I'm going to give you an acronym. It's called CPTED, Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design. Now, I went through an 80-hour course which made me a CPTED guy so I can do residential and commercial crime prevention surveys. But I'm going to give you the simple version. Home is the one place where you should be safer on your property, and bad people and uninvited guests should feel less safe. So that's how we look at it. So when you're dealing with a piece of property that is 2 acres, which I think is a really cool size, that enough to get a horse?
I don't know. My husband would want a horse. I'm not a big fan of that idea, but who knows, maybe.
The difference to get like a really tiny horse? So he gets this
A
horse.
miniature pony.
Like a
I
really
want a
big
goat. I think goats are so cute, but I don't know. Don't put that horse bug in his ear. He'll be like, okay, that's our next purchase after we close on the home.
I'm working on the goat thing. I kind of like it. It saves you from having a long crew. So I'm kind of there. The first thing is I want you to break your home down into public space, private space, and intimate space. Public places are those places you cannot control, but that will affect you in your intimate space. And you had a really good example, I think, where you talked about how I have an alley and I'm on a major street. So that public space you have no control over, but it controls a lot of your safety and a lot of your foot traffic. Before my mom moved into assisted living, she lived in a kind of a standard suburban Houston neighborhood. What's interesting is if you did your survey and you drove through her whole little niche of community, you would notice all the houses on the ends all have burglar bars all over everything, because people would drive down that main street, see those houses visually, break into them. But if you went into the street, which are kind of dead ends, those houses back there didn't have burglar bars. That's just sort of an example of how that flow can sometimes bite you. And I think you recognize that in your current home. So you just might want to think about what kind of streets you have, what kind of access you have, whether they're dead end streets or not, and kind of decide that into your factor. Next thing is you want to start thinking when you build your house, how much of a buffer area or curtilage do you have between where the public ability to enter your property or should be on your property to your front door? Start thinking about that, especially with 3 boys, because you want to get them all the room to run, go play and explore, but have some way to delineate that boundary so that not only they don't go past that boundary, but people hopefully don't come in that boundary. And with that clear delineation, whether that's a fence, signage, some sort of foliage or whatever, that you can identify that, boys, you don't go past here. But also if you look out, you go, somebody's in that space. But the problem with the private space is it's not an intimate space. So people sort of have a reason to be there. Think of somebody coming up to knock on your door to try to solicit you something, or what are your neighbors walking over? And to figure out that buffer by design beforehand might help. But again, this goes back to also making sure you check with the homeowner association so we know upfront what we can and cannot do. In the community I'm at, fencing is some sort of religious thing, apparently, because there's certain kind of boards you can have. They can't be too hot. They can't be too far apart. God help you if one comes loose, because you literally get a letter. I'm thinking, who's looking for loose boards? Neither. Next thing is think about windows. Windows are interesting because you need windows to look out to watch the young ones while they're there. But also a lot of times when we think about these designs, large open picture windows means people, if there's visual access to the public space, can look in. Therefore, you live behind these sort of wall of curtains, which sort of defeats the whole thing. So you might want to think about that from either a design standpoint or a landscaping standpoint, and kind of think about that from visual aspect. Also, try to think about how you're going to receive normal visitors. In my case, a normal visitor is a UPS guy or an Amazon delivery person, or maybe in your case, it's a DoorDash or whatever. How are those people going to come in? Because we can secure that little space we talked about for the kids to play. But if you think about it, there's going to have to be some sort of public access for people to drop off packages, and that's always going to be a compromise. In your case, with that much land, you may say, okay, the front part of my house with front-facing access, that's a public space, but I'm going to fence off the backyard for the boys to play in, and that's an intimate space. No one comes in, no one delivers, boys don't go past this, no one comes in. And if you do see someone in that intimate space that you marked off, then you have a whole different pre-decide decision-making process, which you can go right to and save yourself some grief. Mm-hmm. Now, when it comes time to start thinking about the layout of the house, think about doors, windows, and also about the layout of the home from how you want to protect them. The really cool thing about doors is an unlocked door is an open invitation, all kinds of trouble. A really crummy door is even worse. The problem with doors is they become so expensive. And if you're renting, you're not going to put a new door on it. If you already buy a house, it's got a great door, fantastic. The odds of that are pretty low. If you're building, please budget into this. Good steel door with a solid foam core or a solid wood door. But also I would say, guys, I want my door remember how we talked about that area where we sort of have to have people come in, whether it's DoorDash, whether it's Amazon or whatnot. Let's make that thing a steel door with a steel door frame. And there's ways we can make it more aesthetically pleasing. But when you close that thing and hear that clunk and you throw the lock that's got the big throw into that bolt, and you know that steel frame is mounted in there, you're going to sleep better than if you took a fistful of melatonin. It is an absolute wonderful thing. Next thing is decide whether you want some sort of glass for a visual looking out or peepholes, but spend a lot of time how you want the front door. The back door is a different creature. A lot of people don't spend time thinking about their back door. And if I go to a lot of homes, you go, wow, you have a really great front door. But the back of the house, it's a French door, or the door is a series of panes of glass. But if somebody hops that privacy into the intimate layer, they have all day long to smash into that. So think about front door, back door. Think about attached or detached garage. I personally love an attached garage because to me, when I drive in, that's still a transitional space. Remember, a transitional space is someplace between a safe place and another safe place. Until I get the garage door down, and if I have attached garage, I'm now in a secure place, not in a transitional space. But when you have 3 kids, you're trying to load them, you're trying to unload, you try to have groceries, all this in a place you still have to get on through. It doesn't take long on the internet to find all kinds of people who follow you home and then come in, and that is a real weakness. And
Yeah,
somebody
yeah.
who raised a young lady, I understand what it's like when the kids screaming and you're trying to do the groceries and there's a million things going on. So think about how to kind of control that chaos with another door, not the front, the back, but the garage door. And then also
Okay.
remember, even if it's attached garage, we want to have a really substantial door between the garage door and the outside because your kids are going to be coming and going all day long. And we have the little cheesy lock on most of those homes and beef up on that.
So in a
Windows,
perfect world, what you're saying is you would recommend that still frame door for every door that faces outside, yes?
let me tell you, nobody after home invasion says, wow, I paid too much money to keep that person from kicking in my door.
Mhm.
And it's just one of those things that it's going to add some upfront cost to put it in, but it's one of those things that you ever drive a car with a really high safety rating and it's like, say you're in a Volvo and you think, man, I paid a lot of money for this Volvo. But one day you and the kids are on a really rainy, icy road and you go, thank God I paid the extra money for my Volvo. The door is the exact same thing.
Mhm.
Also, when it comes to doors, we want a good front door, we want a good back door, we want a good garage door. I mean, the big garage door that goes up and comes down, and garage door attached. But let's talk about the windows now. The problem with windows is if you pin them shut, screw them shut, burglar bars, storm windows, all that stuff is great, keeping the bad guys out, but also it becomes a real issue keeping you in case of a fire. The odds of you having home invasion are somewhat, but the odds of you being in a fire emergency are pretty darn high. So when you think about how you're going to secure those windows, in our home, we use storm windows that have very positive latches on both sides, but no keys, no locks, no anything. So if we have to, it's easy enough to get out. And I say easy enough to get out. I'm 60 years old. I'm going to have to hold the hands of my wife to get her out. I'm going to have to get my walker out. So it's like I'm just dying in my office. But think about that from a safety because fire is a real issue. Shout out to all my fire first responder buddies. So think about the windows when you do that. If you buy an existing home instead of building, we did, and we had single pane glasses, which are security risk and just an efficiency nightmare. And the cost of adding that thing up was shocking. I had no idea what it cost to put in serious windows. So if you're building, just you have to budget for it or whatnot. If you're buying into an existing home and you have to replace them, that's going to be tough. But I'm telling you, good door, good windows makes you sleep a whole lot better. Next
Yeah.
thing, think about the layout of the house. The house we lived in before here was a 3-story, kind of one of those sort of narrow city sort of shotgun things. And there was 2 bedrooms on the top, living room in the middle, and the bottom one had a bedroom, which would be great if you have kids that are rambunctious, put them on the bottom. The problem you have is the alarm goes off in the middle of the night. We hear glass breaking. You've got to come down 3 flights of stairs to go grab the kids. Also, if you're thinking about 2-story, you get more house for the money. I got that, but I have to raise a small child once in a 2-story house, and the ladder thing was really, really tough. 2-story, though, is beneficial if you can find a design where everybody's on the top floor, because now defending the home is a beautiful thing. You hear glass breaking, whatever, you just go to the head of the stairwell, you get off in a nice, you can see this in our Concealed Coalition University Safer Angles episode. You get yourself in a nice secure place where you can watch the kids, and anybody comes up the stairwell, they're in what's called a fatal funnel, and you can really protect them. So if you do go 2 stories, there's some downside if you have a floor separating you from the kids, but if all the kids are on the same floor, it makes you just a whole lot easier. How to raise small children with stairwells, though, especially small boys. Oh,
Yeah, we currently live in a 2-story home, so we are looking forward to a 1-story, I will say.
I think you get more home in a 2-story, but boy, it's a
Yeah.
ooh, I can't imagine. And again, you have to understand the reason I keep referring, even though one of yours is an infant, the boys, is because my brother and I, my parents called us the boys, even though we're now in our 60s. My mother, who's still alive,
Still
still
the
calls us the
boys.
boys. And I just find it a heartwarming thing. But also, it explains everything in the first, I'd like to say 12 years of our life, but it's really closer to the first 35 years of our life. You know, that, hey, we got a piece of cardboard. Let's go to the top of the stairs and
Yeah.
make a toboggan out of it. And of course, the older brother's telling the younger brother, you ought to go first. You can see how this works, you know.
Hmm.
So When you think about the layout, think about the glass breaking in the middle of the night, kind of how we're going to handle that. So basically, let's just kind of put a big bow in this thing and see if you have any questions. One is a public thing. We have to look at the big sort of meta picture with the DA, with the community, day and night, where you're going to go to normally, whether or not you want people traveling to and from you, how far you are away from that responder if you're in a rural area when you go 911, how defensible can you make your property with good barriers that don't offend the homeowner association. Strong homeowner association can help you, but it also hurts you if you decide you want certain things. When it comes time to whether you're going to buy or build the strongest doors, the strongest windows, and we could spend a whole 2 hours on just electronic protection. The problem about electronic protection, though, for you is the kids are coming in and out of the house all day. If you put a door chime on, you'll be losing your mind in about 30 minutes. So,
I grew up with the door chime constantly. We just kind of lost track of it after a while. It was just kind of like we're so used to it, we're immune to it at that point. So,
and then the intimate spaces. Think about the best way to harden this so that people can't get in. And if you do have the proverbial bump of the night or glass break, where the layout is of the house that makes it beneficial for you to get to the kids, to get between the kids and whatever threat is. And gosh, help the person who tries to come between you and where you're standing your ground in the sort of Alamo position. Any other questions or thoughts that you have that I didn't cover or that we need to discuss in greater detail about new CASA?
this is a lot to take in. Like, I am so grateful for this conversation because I cannot wait to share with my husband everything I just learned. I didn't think, for instance, about going to speak with the people at the police station. That just never crossed my mind. And so just kind of wrapping my head around all of this, the one thing that I have a question about, and I feel like a lot of homeowners do look into this, but what's our next step is if we look at a sex offender registry, for instance, online, how do we interpret the data? Like, obviously, if you're moving into a neighborhood where there's a few markers, you may want to look for another neighborhood, but like how much do you buy into like what you're seeing on the, national or state sex offender registry? Like, what is your experience with that?
Oh my, this is a question that Concealed Coalition family might not like for me. I'm glad you brought it up because I wouldn't. I wouldn't want to.
Sorry if it's.
No. This is an important question, and it's something that I would normally have a hard time addressing. I do think that it is proper due diligence to see who's a registered sex offender in your community, and I think it's also due diligence to say, kids, when we're going trick or treating, we're not going to that house there or that house there. What concerns me is people seem to think that all sex offenders are registered sex offenders, and the ones who are registered are the most dangerous problems we have. My guess is those registered sex offenders, that was not their first victim, that they got popped for and put on a registry. And I think there's a larger number of potential predators in your neighborhood than on that registry. And just because they're not on the registry doesn't mean they are vetted. Now, having said that, crime happens in motive meets opportunity. So the chance of them getting access to your kid, especially if we really define our intimate spaces, are probably limited. I'm really concerned about sexual predators when we talk about people who teach my kids music, people who are my kids' coaches, people who are my kids' scoutmasters, relatives who seem, let's just go down that path and you know where I'm going. So I'm protective of that issue far past that. So does checking for registered sex offenders, is that due diligence? Yes. Does that mean that we vetted those people and the rest of people in our neighborhood? No, they are still suspect to me. And usually I'm the guy who's telling you, look, 99.9% of people are all wonderful. That stuff all ends where we talk about small children who cannot protect themselves, because this is my one job in my life is to get this kid on this planet and get this kid to an age of competence and out of my house. Wonderful life.
Right.
I can jack up on candy and caffeine and send them back to you. But this is a good question. But do your due diligence and find out. I don't know that I'd want to live next to a registered sex offender, but by the same token, I'm not sure that that's any guarantee that the person I'm living next to is not possibly a sex offender if they had the access and the privacy time to hurt one of the boys. So
Very true.
That is probably not the answer that makes people feel happy, but it is what my heart tells me. And what's really interesting
I appreciate that.
I'm a lieutenant in a small police department, and in this small town that we're responsible for, it is amazing proportionately the number of inappropriate child contacts by adult we have here. And I'm sort of like a big city cop who has a certain beat. And if in that certain small part, the numbers of this are incredible. And we only have one registered sex offender in my community. But we have people who are right now under charges for this, for their kids, and neighbors' kids, sleepovers' kids. It is horrifying. It's hard to even put a proper adjective onto it. So, yeah. So my whole deal with that is we have to limit custody with that. And again, if you haven't seen it in a while, the Concealed Coalition family safety episode, we dive really deep into that about how to vet the people we leave our kids behind with, how to have a plan to make sure that we have enough people in our lives so that when you do have that situation where your mother or your husband's father is sick and you've got to run off and the kids, you need to have a backup plan to who you can leave these kids with safely. The kids also need to know that if something happens in the house, which neighbors have been vetted, they can go down and go, look, if something ever happens and I'm not here, Mrs. Johnson is good. Go to Mrs. Johnson.
Yeah. Go to Mrs. Johnson. Makes
Mr.
sense.
Jones, no bueno. But Miss Johnson, it kind of run that drill.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you so much for answering that. That was really the only other question that I had. I just thought this was, and I'm sorry you originally were not too excited about this, but it is very relevant to my family. And I feel like, with interest rates maybe coming down, who knows what's going to happen. But if that's a potential, there might be people, especially with it being spring, moving into summer as well. I feel like more people are going to be in my situation where we're looking to either buy or build or even rent, but essentially moving to a new space. And so I think this is going to be really relevant to a lot of people. So thank you so much for this.
Thanks for thinking of the topic. And the problem is not that it's not a great topic. When I first heard about it, I thought, sure, I'll do that, no problem. But the problem is I've been doing this for 32 years. I've given over 5,000 crime prevention speeches. If y'all have never seen my Laughing at Danger or my stand-up comedy meets street proven survival, come see it. And it's just one of these, all this process is automatically in my head. And I started thinking, oh my gosh, I went through every one of these steps when I bought my house and put my family in this house. I went, oh my gosh, she's a genius, because this is one of those discrete skill sets. Remember, we are as safe or as less safe as we are with as many of these little discrete skill sets as we have mastered. And, it's like gunshot wound safety. If there's ever, some sort of defensive gun use and someone in the house gets shot, you're not going to get an EMT there in time. Knowing how to patch a bullet wound, that's a discrete skill set. That can be very helpful. Just knowing how to look at a doorway is an open invitation to all kinds of trouble. And especially if it's weak, an open invitation to all kinds of trouble. Now you have an appreciation that, hey man, we need a solid door in here. That's its own little discrete skill set. So hopefully you picked up some of these things. I hope you start sharing more pictures. I hope we can put some pictures of the boys here. Aww. And I am so envious because you have no quiet moments in your home, and that is such an incredible blessing. Just the whole riotness of it. And it's so funny because I don't know if we have time for this real quick story. I'm like, I don't know, 45, 50 years old. My dad calls me and he says, we got to have lunch. I'm like, okay. So we have lunch. We sit down at the table and he reaches in his pocket, pulls out a piece of paper, and hands it to me. I said, what's this? And it says, Mom's birthday, Dad's birthday, Austin's birthday, Don's birthday, Thanksgiving, Christmas, Father's Day, Mother's Day. So all these holidays. I go, what's the list? He goes, that's the only time we get to see you and your brother. I'm thinking about going like big brothers, big sisters, give me a kid. I'm like going, you need to take this list to other adults and go, man, that's the only time we see my kids. That's a lot. I need to renegotiate this. I need less time. But the whole point was, he misses the days where you had a pack of boys in the house and there was chaos and calamity. And he's telling me, I didn't know how good it was the other days when we got make so much noise it drive me crazy.
Don't make me emotional on this webinar. I might shed a tear.
it is so amazing. And I hope you soak up and enjoy every moment with the boys. And I hope they push your buttons all the time. Not only push your buttons, learn to play you like a piano. It's just a
what is that saying? The days are long, but the years are short. So I know before too long, in the blink of an eye, they'll be grown up. So the number one priority for me and my husband right now is just making sure that we protect them and raise them right and keep them safe and keep them well. So.
And I think you're on a great thing. You have my contact number. Please feel free to call me if you have any questions through this. Also, Concealed Coalition family, we can put the number up that you can text me. If you're going through the same issue and you have some sort of question, please, I love answering these questions. Go ahead and text us. And I'm sure, Kaci, we can find some way to put the number on here for them to contact us. Fantastic. Guys, in closing, I'll put a kind of a bow on it. Thank you for your time. I hope this was kind of helpful to you. Again, if you have any additional questions for this, text me. We'll put the number on the screen. If you're a Concealed Coalition University member, please go to our home safety episode and our family safety episode. Probably situational awareness will also come in kind of handy for this. Those 3 episodes, especially, kind of work on this. If you'd ever like to see me live do my stand-up comedy routine, which teaches street safety, called Laughing at Danger, please text us and let us know, and we'll come out to your business group, or if there's enough requests from someplace, we'll send me on out there. But as always, no matter how the world changes and gets crazy, just don't forget, be a guardian always and a warrior when needed.